It is pretty funny with this doing the manager reviews because I screenshotted it and I was like, no, I'm not going to post because I'm also one of the offenders. So I have like a blocker to do it, and after that I can post.
Thanks, Marilla. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Product People community event. I want to say a very warm welcome from a bit of a cold and snowy Berlin tonight. So yeah, I hope where you are, it's also beautiful weather, whether it's hot or cold. So what we're going to be talking about tonight is harnessing the power of design systems with our very own Liza Romanova. So I'm very excited to give the space to Liza to talk to us tonight about design systems and how we can make the most of it. But just before we jump into that, I just quickly want to tell you who I am. So my name is Stefan. I'm a senior product management consultant at Product People. And you can see here on the side, this is some of the companies that I've worked with and some of my experience as well. I'm not going to bore you with too much about me. I know you want to hear what Liza has to say to us tonight. And just something about Product People as well. So we're an interim product management company. We have product leaders, product ops, product managers at the varying levels. That's how we make money. And then how we give back is what we're doing tonight, for example, is having this community event where we share knowledge and information about topics that touch us in the world of product and in tech. And if you're here tonight, you're part of our product management community, which is quite big right now. It's already at 30,000 members. And we just want to say thank you for being part of that community. And we hope that these sessions also give you a lot of benefit and value. So now going into the actual topic, we want to ask you two questions to warm you up before Liza takes the stage, just to start getting your brain into this thinking. So the first question is, are you familiar with design systems? Have you ever heard of it before? Have you used it before? Are you in a team that uses it? So you have 4 answers that you can give here. The first one is yes, I use one regularly, or yes, I have interacted with or used one before. The third option is I've heard about them before, but I've never used them. And no, but I'd like to learn more about them. And the second question is, what aspects of design systems do you find more useful? The first answer here is improved collaboration among teams, or faster product development, consistency across products, or facilitates creative thinking. So if you're on Zoom, you would see that there's a poll little box that popped up for you to make your selection from. And if you're on any of the other streaming services, you can just let us know in the chat. We have a team member that's also looking at those answers as well and can send them through to us so that we can see what you're saying. So for me, I definitely have interacted with or used design systems before, but I haven't actually used the physical parts of it yet, but I know how beneficial they are. So it'll be really cool to see Liza giving us a bit of a rundown of this. And then I think our results are in. So most people actually think the same as me. They've interacted with it or used it before. And then there are a little bit of people that have also said they've heard about them before, but they've never used them. And then with the answer about what aspects of design systems do you find more useful, it's consistency across products that's gotten most of the votes from our participants tonight. And then second to that is that it has improved collaboration among teams. I think there really isn't a wrong answer here. Without further ado, then I would want to hand over to Liza to give us a really in-depth view of design systems and how we can harness its power. Liza, I'm going to stop sharing and then you can take over.
Thank you, Stefan. Yeah, let me just quickly share my screen. Let me know if you're able to see it.
Yes, we can see it. Thanks, Liza.
Perfect. So, as you can tell from the name of the presentation today, I will be talking to you about the design system and how you can harness their power. a quick overview of the agenda. First, I'd like to introduce design systems, how they're used in modern product development, some of the benefits, and mention a few cool real-world examples that you can also check out for yourself. And the second part, I'll give you a quick introduction into the role of product management, but also like what are some of the specifics of being a product manager on a design system. And last but not least, I'll give you a small overview of Back Market's design system, so a small case study, a quick overview of our journey at Back Market with the design system team, what we have accomplished, what challenges we have faced. So without further ado, let's jump into it. First of all, a quick introduction as to who am I and why am I speaking to you today about design systems. So my name is Liza. I'm an associate product management consultant at Product People. I studied industrial design and product development, which is physical product development. And now I always like to participate in hackathons and startup competitions. And that was kind of what paved my way into product management. I started working as a visual designer at my previous job. And that's when I first also got in touch with design systems. Because at my previous company, we also developed websites and applications for our clients. And my journey with Back Market's design system began last year when I joined as an interim product manager. And just to say that, like, I was very grateful to get the chance to work with Back Market and their design system and kind of like see the inner workings of what it entails and, you know, what kind of work goes into maintaining one and serving our users. So what are design systems? Design system is a set of guidelines, components, and standards that come together to provide a shared language to manage design at scale and provide coherence in digital product design and development. So it's important to note that design systems are like living things. They need to constantly also evolve and develop alongside with the product and the advent of new technologies, of course. So this means that the design system has to serve the end users, and the end users in this case are the designers and front-end engineers that are making use of your design system. So yeah, just like an important to note that the design system has to evolve together with the company and the product that the company is developing. So what composes a design system? Well, first of all, we have the components, which are reusable building blocks that cover specific interactions. Here you can see some examples of Back Market's design system components. We also have tokens, and these represent design decisions that make up the design system's visual styles. So in this case, we have the colors, the typography, the spacing, animation transitions. We also have assets, and these are all the graphical elements ranging all the way from illustrations to icons, images, videos. And of course, a very important, probably if not the most important aspect of a design system is the documentation, which provides general usage recommendations and guidelines as to how do you make use of all of these components, tokens, assets. And this should also include accessibility standards to ensure that your designs are inclusive and compliant. So jumping into a bit more details here with the tokens, as mentioned, that the tokens are design decisions represented as data. Here in this slide, you can see an example of what those design tokens might be. So we have tokens for typography, we have for colors, for buttons, for example, what is the radius of the button? And yes, as mentioned, an important aspect to have in mind when it comes to tokens is that any change that you make to a token automatically propagates through the entire product. When it comes to components, here we have a few examples as well of components, like the tooltip. We have a form, a button, a slider. So these provide pre-designed solutions for designers to use when building new interfaces. This helps them save speed and increase the delivery process. Some components are pretty like standard and essential across all design systems, such as buttons, text inputs or tooltips. But then again, depending on your product and needs, you can have components that are very specific to your use cases. So in the case of back market, which is in e-commerce, these, for example, would be like the rating component or the status tracker when you make an order and then you keep track of your status. Is it shipped? Has it been delivered? Now, to talk a little bit about design systems and modern product development, what are some of the benefits that it comes when you implement a design system in your business? So, of course, we have efficiency and faster development cycles. Design systems help streamline the design and development process because, as mentioned before, they provide you with predefined components and guidelines. Maintaining brand identity, it's super important to have brand consistency by offering standardized elements. You have colors, typographies, logos. This strengthens the brand recognition and trust that you provide to your users. We also have some benefits to the user experience by promoting consistent UI elements and interactions. And that way you can also help ensure that your UI interface is user-friendly and intuitive. We also have improved collaboration, the understanding between designers and developers. The design system ensures that there is a common language and shared resources. And of course, reduced design debt. Design system helps update design elements efficiently. As we mentioned before, any change that or update that you make to a component propagates instantaneously across the whole product suite. And this, of course, helps reduce product debt and ensures that your user interface stays current and relevant with the evolution of the product. So I also brought a few examples of design systems. These are open source, so you can go online and you can see the design system, you can see the documentation, how they have structured it. Here I just brought a few examples of design systems that are considered like the top-rated design systems out there. So we have Google's Material Design. There's also Shopify's Polaris and Microsoft Fluent Design System. So whoever is curious, you can just Google these and you will have access to their documentation and be able to play around and test with their components as well. And jumping into the next part, which we talk about the role of the product manager on the design system. First, I wanted to take a few steps back and remind everyone or explain to some of those who might not know what is the role of a product manager. So most of you have probably seen this famous diagram where we have the product manager at the intersection between the tech, the business, and the users, right? So you have to make sure that what you're developing is technically feasible, but it also aligns with the company business goals, and it's something that your users want. But what are some of the specificities when it comes to being a PM on a design system team? So, of course, some of the responsibilities, you have to make sure that your design system has a vision and strategy that is also aligned with the company goals. I think that's something that's very important for any team, but even more so for the design system, because you have to make sure that the design system evolves together with the product. You have to know where your company is heading, where the product is heading. It's also fostering collaboration between designers and developers. As we mentioned before, the design system helps ensure that there's a shared language between designers and developers, which increases and betters the communication between them. A very important aspect is evangelization. So you want to make sure that other product teams are fully aware of the design system, they understand the value, and they also know how to use it. So it's very important to also educate other product managers in the company and their teams to maximize the adoption of your design system. And of course, as with any good product, you should, of course, be mindful of the feedback that you receive from your users and integrate that continuously to improve the design system. Of course, we also have optimizing the ways of working of your own team. So given the nature and scope of your team, you should seek ways to improve collaboration with other teams, and seeing how you can service them better as the design system. And last but not least, you will hear me mention this several times throughout the presentation, but accessibility is super important aspect to keep in mind. Apart from integrating accessibility standards into the design system components themselves and guidelines, it's also super important to promote accessibility on a company level, especially when it comes to creating a shared understanding of why accessibility is important, how does it benefit the product. And now more than ever, because the European Accessibility Act now requires that user-facing premises comply with what is known as the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines by June 2025. So this in and of itself is already a big topic, and that's why you will hear me throughout the presentation mention like accessibility many times. So overcoming challenges and driving the success of the design system. So what are some of the best practices if you're looking to implement the design system in your company or for your product? First things first, as mentioned before, you should start out with a clear vision and goals. What are you trying to achieve? This will be your guide when planning out the roadmap, of course, and deciding what is it that you need to work on to improve your design system, and that will also help you prioritize accordingly. This pairs well with the second point here, which is taking a user-centric approach. So prioritizing the user needs and experiences and making sure that your end users are served effectively by the design system. By end users, it's our designers and front-end engineers that are actually building the customer-facing products. It's also very important to have good documentation and communication channels to maximize adoption and usage efficiency of your design system. Because it's no good if you have like a very nice design system, but nobody uses it. You have to make sure that you maximize adoption and promote and evangelize the design system in your company. You should also think about offering training and support to empower your users to use the design system effectively. So this can include accessibility training, as I mentioned previously, and this plays a big role in ensuring that you can create inclusive experiences for your customers and also be compliant with the new regulations. And last but not least, you need to be able to monitor and maintain the design system. So to address any issues that might come up, incorporate feedback from your users, and of course, ensure the long-term success. Important to note that, of course, all of this is done in collaboration with your team. Now, how would you measure the design of your health system? So a design system's value, you can say, is realized when products ship features that are using the design system parts, right? So your motivation is to help teams improve efficiency and quality by adopting what you make. So ultimately, it's all about if the design system is used in production work or not. So in this table, I've collected a few metrics that can give you a general idea of what you should look out for to measure the health of your design system. So this is not a non-exhaustive list, but it serves to give you a general idea. So for example, in general, you can see like the number of components that are part of your design system, how many contributions you receive, and contributions are when somebody from the product team asks you to implement a new component in the design system, because most of the times you will have your users that are coming to you and asking to contribute a component because they are the ones that know best and the ones that are working on the customer-facing product, what kind of features they're working on, what kind of components do they need to evolve together with the product. We also have some adoption metrics. As mentioned, this is very important to keep track of the adoption of your design system. So the documentation that your users are making use, the number of components used in the code base itself. Of course, satisfaction is something that you should also look out to measure. What is the user's experience when using the design system? How satisfied are they with the contribution model that you have, with the documentation and the guidelines that you put in place? Also the coverage. So sometimes product teams might bypass the design system if they see that they need to create or ship a feature really fast and they don't have time to go through the contribution process. So it's also very important to measure how many components you actually have in the design system code base versus components that might be bypassed and not part of the design system, but due to like time limitations and time constraints, some product teams might choose to implement those outside of the design system. Of course, it's also the number of components that is in use. And when it comes to the health and quality of the design system, as mentioned before, accessibility score is super important. I will go into this a little bit deeper when I talk about back market study case. And of course, the number of components documented in your design system documentation sites. And if possible, this one is a bit harder and trickier to track, but if you can track the efficiency, so how much are you helping speed up the process, the delivery process of new features, new products for the product teams. So jumping into the last and probably most interesting part, I will talk about my journey with Back Market and their design system. So for those of you who might not know what Back Market is, it's an online marketplace for refurbished technology. They currently operate in 13 countries. This includes Europe, Asia. They've also expanded into the US. They're headquartered in Paris, France. And interesting data, like they raised over 1 billion in 6 funding rounds as of 2022. Now, this is a high-level overview of the timeline since I joined Back Market. Here you can see some of the kind of important milestones that I've highlighted. So during this time, since we joined, you can see the design system at Back Market, they didn't have a vision or mission. So when we joined, one of the first things that we did is we worked with the team to create one. We also established the Support Heroes, which is essentially a channel where other designers and engineers can reach out to our support heroes who are on support rotation. So there's a designer and engineer that are always there to answer questions or help with any requests that our users might have. Of course, during this time, we also launched a survey, did interviews with our users to kind of identify what we should prioritize, what are the main pain points that they're experiencing currently. We work to improve our ways of working. We introduced some workflow automations as well. I will go into that a bit deeper in the next slide. Also, a big part of our roadmap this year has been occupied by supporting Back Market's rebranding, which was a huge initiative. And as you can imagine, the design system played a crucial role in making this possible. And last but not least, just to mention that since when we started, at the end of August, we actually submitted our design system to Zero Heights Design System Awards, which was very exciting. So there's been a lot of a very big journey, a lot of work behind it. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more now about some of the challenges that we faced and how we managed to overcome them from when we joined the team from the very beginning. So for some context, when we joined the team, the product manager role was vacant since the inception of the design system team itself. And the team was existing for already approximately 1 year, but it was mainly governed by the designers and engineers that were part of the team. So when we joined the team, what we first encountered is that there was a lack of evangelization, meaning that there was no awareness across the company of even the existence of the design system, but also what it does, what is the mission, increasing adoption, how to use it. So one of the first things that we did is, as mentioned before, we defined a very clear and concise vision and mission, and we evangelized that across the organization. This resulted in an 89% increase of survey participants telling us that they were aware of the design system and its goals. We also prepared a comprehensive survey aiming to gather feedback on the usage and satisfaction around the design system and understand which pain points we should tackle first. We also optimized the ways of working. So here we actually had a huge backlog of over 500 tickets when we joined, and we implemented a 5-level prioritization scale. So we used severity, frequency, and urgency to better understand our priorities. We also shifted from Kanban to Scrumban, and this allowed us to split up the work into smaller chunks and also like track our velocity and progress that we were making. And we also implemented an automation across Jira and Slack. And this is mainly for the support part of the design system. So when our engineers or designers are answering questions or supporting the development of certain components or features, with this automation, we help save around 14 hours of manual effort. And with this, we also contributed directly to the autopilot objective of the company, which is very nice. And last but not least, we also worked on improving the existing contribution model that they had and rolling out a new one for the users. So what was the impact of the design system on the company? So first things first, apart from ensuring the brand consistency and correct implementation of the design system itself, of course, we're also constantly working on improving internal processes and documentation to deliver the best experience for the product squads. And in turn, this helps us ensure that they can deliver new and improved features for back markets customers on time. Next to that, we have, as part of the design system squad, building accessible experiences was one of the core values of our vision that we established with the team. And at Back Market, we are collaborating with an external agency that helps us audit our platforms. Back Market has a website, and it also has an iOS and Android app. And with that, based on the results of the audits, we started to prioritize and prepare a backlog of the uncovered findings, accessibility findings that were encountered, and to then be tackled by the feature squads. In addition to that, we also facilitated and set up some trainings on accessibility across the product and engineering organizations, and to allow for our users to be more, for us to be more inclusive in our design and development. And since accessibility focuses on your user experience, you need to make sure that your users can actually use your products and get through the funnel. In case of back market, it's super important. You want to make sure that your customers can actually buy what you're selling, and accessibility helps us ensure that as well. And as I mentioned previously, earlier this year, Back Market launched a company-wide initiative to do a company-wide brand refresh. And in this case, the design system played and still plays a pivotal role in enabling this rebranding to take place. So for the better half of the year, we have worked on rebranding the entire design system and preparing comprehensive documentation to help the product squads migrate to the new brand. So I think a company rebranding is also a great example to showcase the value that a design system can bring to an organization, especially if we're talking about an e-commerce such a Back Market that spans worldwide across many countries. If you recall, when I mentioned tokens, I spoke about that any style updates that are made to a token will automatically propagate across all products that are using those tokens. So as you can already imagine, this is something that is invaluable when it comes to rebranding your products, and where the design system truly shines and shows its power. And last but not least, I would like to give you an overview of some of the features and a sneak peek into the Back Market's design system, which is called Revolve, and our documentation. So what you see here is the design system documentation that is currently being hosted on a site called Zero Height. Zero Height is a platform that facilitates collaboration and documentation for design system. I would say also like a word of a word of disclaimer here. The design system is not the police, so we don't dictate how things must be done, but instead we give recommendations and promote best practices that are in everybody's interest. So essentially, it's a win-win situation for everybody in the end. Next to that, we have here what is a high-level overview of the steps that we have in our current contribution model. So here you see a screenshot from our documentation site. Basically, anybody that wants to propose a new component for the design system, they are free to do so and welcome to do so. All they have to do is follow the guides and the steps that we have outlined for them here. This is the foundation section of our documentation. And here you will be able to get all the information that you need when it comes to accessibility guidelines, colors, the different types of tokens. As mentioned, we have tokens for radius, shadow, spacing, motions, grids and breakpoints, just to mention a few. And probably the most interesting and fun part, if I may say so, of the documentation is the components section. So here you not only see all of the components that are currently in the design system, but you can also play around with them and see how they work. So here you can see, I just took a few examples of, we have action components, we have communication components, and control components. And again, based on your product, you might have different components in your design system. In this case, here you can see this is the toast component. And this one is used when you need to provide immediate feedback on an action performed by a user. So on the left, you can see how each component has its own anatomy, guidelines, and usage and implementation for web, iOS, and Android, because Backmarket, as mentioned, also has 2 apps. And some of the accessibility aspects that need to be taken account. And on the right, you can see a small demo of this component. So when you play around with it, with the different controls. And this demo that you can see is posted on another tool that is called Storybook. And that one is primarily used for front-end UI development. And we have integrated that with our Zero Height documentation. Here's another component. This one is the toggle component. And here you can see the respective demo of that component as well. And we also have an assets section of our documentation, and here you will find relevant documentation when it comes to making use of Backmarket's assets. So UI assets such as icons, also brand assets as the logo type, and of course the fonts. And lastly, we also introduced a new section with the rebranding of Backmarket to our documentation. And this is the content section, which houses all of the writing principles and some of the stylistic rules, followed by UX content designers and copywriters at Backmarket. So for example, the tone of voice and best practices for web elements, for implementation of web and component elements. And this is it. I thank you very much for attending this presentation. I hope that you found it useful and insightful. Of course, I would also like to get your feedback. Don't hesitate to contact with me on LinkedIn later on. And yeah, huge thank you to Stefan for hosting me today. I'm gonna stop sharing and leave the stage to you now again.
Cool. Thank you, Liza. That was really, really great. I think, especially for some of us that have not been so deep into design systems and seeing something so extremely practical and useful, I think it's really, really cool for anyone that even wants to go into design system one day. I think this is a very cool video that they can go and look back on. So I think we've already gotten some questions around whether the slides will be shared. So Hicham, what you'll see is this will be posted on YouTube. It will stay there forever, so you can go and look at it there again. And then, yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Liza. Now you're not completely done yet. We still want to take some information out of your brain. So for everyone that's in the call and everyone that's on these different streaming sites, the different streaming sites, you can post some of your questions that you have for Liza that she can answer for you. I'm going to give you like a minute to think of what that question is and start putting it down so that everyone has a chance to put it down. And in that minute, I'll just quickly talk a little bit about product people again, just to make up some time. So there's certain use cases where it's best to engage product people, and that's when you have like a product manager that's going on parental leave, or the team is growing really fast and there's a new product team that came up and you need someone to fill in there, or someone has left and it takes a bit of a while to fill someone in that space. So we do best when it's like 3 or more months. Liza, you've been at like some of your clients for quite a significant time, longer than 3 months. So that's also when we can really offer great value. And then we also do product coaching and product consultancy, and also working within product discovery and running low code or no code pilots and MVPs. These are some of the B2C clients that we've worked with that we're really proud of. And these are some of the B2B clients that we've worked with and really loved working with. And then just some product people stats. So we've supported over 200 cross-functional teams. We're 42 product leaders and product managers. And then a stat that we're particularly proud of as well is that 62% of our team is made up out of women, and 66% of our leadership is also made up out of women. So we're really very happy about that stat. And then this is our team, all of our pretty faces there. And if you wanted to join that little onigiri there at the bottom, that's what we call our logo, that thing that you can eat, the onigiri. If you wanted to be one of those onigiris that falls in that place there, you can apply to product people. So we're hiring. What you can do is you can take your phone and you can hover over this QR code with your camera, and it will take you to a link where you can apply to product people. And then on the other side, you'll see there's a subscription to our newsletter. You can also hover over that QR code and it can take you to our newsletter. At product people. So I'm going to keep this slide up here so that you can actually go back and just do your QR code scanning. But in the meantime, I'm going to go into the questions that we have. So Liza, I think you have spoken about this in your presentation, so maybe this will be a very quick answer. But there's a question from Andreas asking, how do you track adoption of components effectively?
Yeah, so this is actually one of the trickiest parts, I would say, is to actually tracking the adoption. And to be honest, many design systems are struggling with it, like big or small companies. This is something that is quite difficult to track. But I would say make use of Figma Analytics. If you use Figma allows you to track essentially like the usage of your libraries. So you have your component inserts. You can see like how many components are being used, how many instances. I would say an important element to tracking adoption is actually speaking to your users. Probably the best way to speak to your users to actually figure out, especially I can speak about from my experience at Backmarket. Backmarket has a lot of different teams, and not every team is making use of the design system. It also doesn't make sense for all teams to make use of it, but you want to make sure that your target users are making use of it. So I would say apart from Figma Analytics, which we are also using at Backmarket, the best way that you can keep track is essentially speaking to your users, monitoring the component usage this way, and actually speaking to them and figuring out like how satisfied they are with the design system itself, and like how are they making use of the design system, and what projects, what features, what components. This will help you give like a better overview. So sadly, there is no kind of like cookie cut way in which you can easily measure this adoption, but you can try to take measures to try and make it as effective as possible.
Thanks, Liza. It's also said Figma Analytics is a great approach. Thank you. So thanks for that practical answer. And then we also have a question from Ciaran or Chiaran. Are there any drawbacks to working with design systems?
I would say you have to be quite thoughtful about how restrictive your design system is, right? Because on one hand, you do want to make sure that you are compliant, let's say, with accessibility issues. This is something very important. And you want to make sure that it's on brand, but you also want to give your users the flexibility to be able to contribute to the design system, but also be flexible in how you use your components. Something that's very important for us at Back Market, and I think, well, for any design system, I would say, is you have to make sure that the components and any assets, essentially, that you have in your design system, you want to make sure that they are reusable and they don't just serve as like a very specific use case. So the design system works best is when you have components that are essentially can be used across, you know, all of the teams, or at least maximize adoption as much as possible. So I would say like the drawback is probably maybe, if you can call it that way, like reduced creativity, right? You have to have like a balance between like how restrictive you are, but also how open you are to maybe do component overrides when needed, which is not always recommended, but sometimes you do need to do those in order to like adapt to like a specific feature or a product.
Thank you, Liza. And then I think something that fits in a little bit into that world is a question that we have from Sabina from YouTube, which is, what are the signs or problems in a company that can mean that it is a good time to introduce a design system?
I would say that it also depends on the size of the company and how many products you have. For example, if it's a small company and you just have one product, it's not always, I wouldn't recommend to everybody to implement a design system. Like, it really depends on a case-by-case basis. You have to look at what internal resources you have. Like, do you actually have designers and engineers that can maintain the design system? Remind me again, how was the question phrased? Because I felt like I went on a tangent a little bit and I wanted to...
No, that's cool. You're passionate, Liza. The question was, what are the signs or problems in a company that can mean that it is a good time to introduce a design system?
Yes. So what I was getting at essentially is, if you have, let's say, a big suite of products, right? One of the probably main elements that you want to make sure is that everything is on brand. Like, you don't want to also be creating like a button every single time that you're working like on a new product page or something. So when it comes to that, I would say brand consistency. If you notice that you're having a hard time maintaining brand consistency, you're also having a hard time with the development and communication between designers and engineers, because one of the things that design system is strong at is that it creates this common and shared language that helps you actually like speed up delivery times and make sure that, you know, you're on brand with the products that you're delivering. So I would say, like, if you notice that you have a lot of products, or maybe just one product, but it's very big, that can also happen, and you're having troubles maintaining like that design consistency, also accessibility, because design system helps ensure that you're accessible. If you're having a lot of accessibility issues, it's also a good time to think about, maybe this is something that can be solved by a design system. And yeah, of course, like making lives easier for designers and engineers.
Cool, thank you, Liza. And then I think the natural question that Andreas is also asking here in the chat as well, I think you've spoken to us about what should trigger you to start thinking about this, what are some of the downsides, and what you've spoken about there is also, it could maybe like take away a little bit of your creativity in the name of consistency. But then the question from Andreas is, how do you incorporate contributions to the design system? And is there a way, is there like some board that decides on this contribution we'll take and put in the design system and this one we won't? How does that happen?
Yeah, so I can speak to you like from Back Market experience and what we do at with Back Market's design system. As mentioned before, you want to have certain like guidelines when it comes to component inclusion, but you also want to make sure like that they're not extremely rigid, because you want people to actually contribute to the design system, and you want the design system to have like increased adoption. So what we do at Back Market is we essentially, one of the main elements that we look at is if the component is reusable. So first of all, you actually want to make sure before you even think about creating a new component, can the use case be served by an existing component that you already have in the design system? So that's probably the first aspect that you should look at. And if you see that the use case is not served by any existing component, then you can think about, okay, is this component that is being proposed, is it going to serve just this particular use case? Or can it be then used by other teams across other domains and other parts of the product that you're developing? So it doesn't just serve that particular use case, because keeping in mind that the design system also requires resources to maintain it. So every time you introduce a new component, that's more components that you need to maintain of the design system. So you have to be very mindful about how many components you have, and also making sure and doing kind of like this health check. As for the existing components, right? You might have introduced the components before to your design system, but then you track the usage and you see, okay, it's no longer used. So there's also this life cycle, right? Just to maintain the healthier design system, making sure that what you currently have in the design system is actually being used. But I would say the main aspect is making sure that it's reusable and it's not just serving a particular purpose, and that your team will later have to, also maintain it as part of the design system.
Cool. Thank you, Liza. Liza, you can be calm, because there's only going to be 2 more questions I think that we have time for. So the one of them that I've seen is from Hitcham, asking, would you recommend using design tokens to make sure the design system is indeed followed? I think this is a little bit more on the practical side as well.
I have more questions about what does it mean that the design system is followed, because the tokens are applied to the design system components, right? So if you're making use of the components of the design system, it is already implied that you also make use of the design tokens that are applied to those components. So yeah, I don't know if it can be if there's more information that can be given for this question, because it's something that's already kind of a given. If you're using components, those components are using tokens. So if you're using components, you're also using tokens. They go hand in hand.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're either... Oh, yeah, Hitcham.
Sorry, maybe I can comment on that. The issue is sometimes, to make sure the developer is actually following what's in the design system, and sometimes some discrepancies. So we were trying to use design tokens to just make sure what's in the design is what's in the code also.
Okay, makes sense. I can tell you at the Back Market, usually when designers or front-end engineers, they're working on some kind of new feature or maybe a page, we do design system checks. So before they actually ship it and put it in production, they contact the design system team. So they contact our team and they ask us to give basically the new feature or product a look, to make sure that it's aligned with the design system guidelines, and making sure that you're actually using the right tokens in the right places, because that's also kind of a topic that you need to keep in mind. You need to make sure that you're applying the tokens in the right places, because you have raw tokens, but you also have semantic tokens, and these carry a special meaning when it comes to components, right? For example, the green color, usually it signifies success, or red is associated with something, for example, with some kind of fail. If you're inputting your password and it's wrong, then you have this, little message at the bottom that says hey, either your email or password is wrong. So there are different kinds of tokens. But the way that it works at Back Market is we always try to make sure that there's a check in place before you actually ship to production. So the designers or engineers of the design system know best where and how the tokens should be used.
Thanks,
I hope
Liza.
that manages just to answer the question.
Maybe just one last question. Does the process take too long? Because do you run this review every time there is a software update, no matter how small, or do you leave it for them to decide what to review and what's necessary?
Yeah, good question. So essentially, we leave it up to the teams. It's not like I mentioned before, like we're not the police. We also don't want to be blocker or a bottleneck, especially for working with tight deadlines. Usually, this has to do with if you're developing, let's say, a new page, like in a website or an app, and you want to check in with the design system. Usually, it's kind of like for new pages, new features. But you also making sure that your documentation and guidelines are up to date. You can also make sure that the other designers and front-end engineers don't have to reach out to you every single time, and you try to make it like as clear as possible where and how like the tokens should be used. So you also try to save some of that work for yourself by providing them with good documentation, so they're also self-sufficient as much as possible. But the way it works at back market, as mentioned, usually the product teams already know, like, hey, if it's kind of like a new feature and we need a design system check, they reach out to us. But definitely it's not done every single time, you make an update to your apps or your website. Thank you, Hicham.
Thank you, Liza. And then for everyone who's asked questions that we didn't get to tonight, we've unfortunately run out of time. But I think we had really great presentation from you, Liza. Great answers to the questions that people have given. Great questions that people have asked. So yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining today and for being so engaged in the topic. And thank you, Liza, for sharing your knowledge with us. I really appreciate it. And I think everyone really enjoyed the talk.
If I might, because I know there's a lot of questions than what we have time for, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. And as mentioned, we will also share this presentation. But yes, don't hesitate to reach out. And if I can help answer some more of your questions, I will gladly do so.
Awesome. Thank you, Liza. And thanks everyone for joining. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Well, that went pretty well.